introduce him to you all. So first we'll go to Catherine de Zegher.
Hello, Catherine.
Nicole already told about how we met, and Catherine is an internationally acclaimed author and curator, and she's made exhibitions and curated biennials all over the world. She was also the director of museums, the Drawing Center in New York, and the Museum of Fine Arts in Ghent. And she has actually meant a lot for women artists that we all know today, like Hilma of Klint,
Yeah.
Louise Bourgeois. It's partly through her work that we all know their work. So I'm very excited to hear to let Catherine speak about the goddess Artemis. She also wrote a beautiful piece about Artemis in our upcoming issue.
Hey, thank you. Am I now on the screen? Yeah, because I can only see you. Very strange. Anyway, um, yes, we did this whole series of issues on women artists, and it was quite a daunting task, of course. But when you work every day and little by little, you get there. But when Nicole asked me to make also the last volume, I was a bit, as she said, I was a bit taken aback by the topic goddesses, especially in a time when there is a transition from, let us say, the age of enlightenment to the age of myth. You know, everybody is creating their own myth now. So I was a little bit worried about the topic, but then also suddenly I realized that the Greek goddesses and the Roman goddesses that we were taught in school were in fact the goddesses of the invader, of the occupying force. So we never spoke in school about the goddesses of our own countries in the north of Europe. In any case, I felt like we should dedicate the issue to the whole world because there's so many goddesses. There are thousands of goddesses. And that's how in the discussion with Nicole we came to focus on every continent. But of course we cannot share all these goddesses. I'm not sure if there is now an inventory of all the goddesses or if in the end we didn't do this. But somewhere there is an inventory of all the goddesses in the world, and that's how we came I being a European, I decided to focus on, and I will try to get this PowerPoint going. Yes, okay, there we go. Artemis. So I decided to go for Artemis because to me she's a wonderful goddess. Especially, how do you deal with this? How do you deal with Artemis? So I decided to focus on all her attributes. So she's the goddess of the moon, the wilderness, the chase, chastity, and childbirth. And I wanted to go through the ages and focus on women artists, but I only have like 7 pages, of course. So first, I was trying to find an uh, an image, and there are many images of Artemis, but not so many made by women. And I focused on this one by Julia Margaret Cameron. Artemis is very often portrayed with a crescent moon and armed with a silver bow and quiver of arrows. She's roaming the wilderness together with her hunting dogs, also sacred deer, and with dancing nymphs. And she belongs to the Greek Parthenon, of course, pantheon, and as the firstborn twin sister of Apollo. And there's a very interesting book by Jean Shinoda Bolen, and I will quote her because she sees Artemis as an indomitable spirit in every woman. And I quote her here: an archetypal predisposition towards egalitarian brotherly relation with men, a sense of sisterhood with women, the ability to aim for a distant target or rise to the challenge, and a preference to be in nature rather than in cities. End of quote. So I felt very drawn to her, especially I was writing about art and the forest and its animals. So, and on top of that, Boland sees her also as a feminist and as the birth giving goddess who is fierce in her caring, healing, and protectiveness, like a mother bear. And I'll speak about the mother bear because it's one of her animal symbols. So each of us can wonder, do I see these characteristics in myself? Do I have Artemis as an active archetype? And about Cameron herself, well, Cameron, um, I could tell you a lot about this artist, but although she had a very short career from 1864 to 1875, she nevertheless made 1,200 pictures, and she was concurrent with the pre-Raphaelite movement. But con- in contrary to her male peers, she was portraying women not as seductresses or as paramours, but rather as caring mothers and grandmothers with children and grandchildren, affectionate, caressing, kissing, and in home theatricals with mythological, biblical, and allegorical scenes. So you have to imagine these little house theaters where she was dressing up her grandchildren to play all kinds of Shakespearean or mythological scenes. But let us go back to the beginning. So, how can I go through history, through time, and speak about Artemis? Well, in primordial time, so far as we understand it today, all societies worshipped gods and goddesses, or entities that were imagined as we might imagine deities. They were everywhere, on earth and in the sky. They could be the living mountain and sea, the woods, the swamps, the thunder and lightning, but they were not yet anthropomorphized. There was not yet a separation between all beings in the world. So you have to imagine an earth that was populated by humans, animals, mammals, birds, insects, trees, stones, minerals, all having equal being in this world. So, but then increasingly, through civil evolution of civilization, there were more and more a sense of separation and codification because we couldn't grasp the world as as chaotic and to control that which was beyond control and contain that which was boundless. So today it's actually very difficult for us in the West to imagine what it means to see everything in the world as alive, even as divine. And the notion of an anima is thought of as something abstract, unreliable, or perhaps esoteric, but it used to be very real. So if there was animism and totemism at first, and then myths with personification in Greek and Roman culture, like a figuration of principles in the goddess Artemis, there is now more and more a return to animism, at least a conception of existence with borders more porous, less certain in our ecological movements. And during the Ice Age, so I'm coming to the wilderness and the hunt as one of her attributes. And we see here images of Paleolithic caves with spectacular paintings and drawings. And it was always said that they were made by men, but recently, feminist archaeology has revisited the interpretation of the handprints on the cave walls and came to the suggestion that the hands were also by women who participated in the animist ritual and art making. So these observations about the hunter gatherers also emphasize the concept of spiritual interconnectedness between species, between human and animal. And we can see here what Leroy-Gourhan describes as women, femme bison, women bison, with a gradual transition from one into the other. So, inspired by this Paleolithic cave art, I came to the paintings of Avius Newman, who addresses this pre symbolic oneness with the world as a transgression of the boundaries of the ego and the either or fixities in meaning. She's also attempting to, it's an attempt also to know the unknowable. And then we come to the other attribute, the wilderness, sacred forest, and I bumped into the La Forêt Vierge de Saint-Baume, which is actually quite an amazing forest which I visited in the French Provence, and it has an incredible history of myth and pilgrimage. And this is often the reason why these sacred forests survive the destruction of man. And here, evidence suggests that this sacred mountain was of archaic pagan origin, and it was called Mother of the Waters. And later in history, it was dedicated to Artemis, and then much later to Maria Magdalena, Mary Magdalena, Christ's disciple who ended up in the Provence and actually lived in a cave. In the middle of the image, you can see a cloister, and in the middle is like a black entrance, and that's the entrance to the cave of Maria Magdalena, where she lived for more than 30 years. And here we see Artemisia gentileschi. Of course, I worked through associations through time, and of course, we had to include Artemisia. And Magdalena is depicted here as withdrawn to this life of solitary penitence, of chastity and prayer following Christ's death. And by the Italian Baroque painter Artemisia Gentileschi. And the flamboyant Gentileschi is considered among the great female artists of the 17th century who very often tackled mythological scenes. And in the drawing, Artemisia Espace Perspective, interdit d'Artemisia Gentileschi, the artist Leah Loblin questions the image of one Artemisia's most iconic paintings, Judith slaying Holofernes. And she inquires into the acts and the repressed desires in the life of artists. And Lublin suggests that the sword used by the women in the picture can be interpreted as a penis, and that if we were to look attentively at the scene of the beheading of the Assyrian general, it would turn into a scene of defloration, rape, castration, and even childbirth, with the arms seeming to be legs. So it's the projection of the pulse of death into the pulse of life. And indeed, as traumatic events can inspire painters, Artemisia, who was the eldest child in her family with three younger brothers, became at the age of 12 the principal caregiver when her mother died in childbirth. So I'm coming to the last attribute, childbirth. Artemisia actually deserves her name. She was very fierce. If you know her story, where she was raped by her tutor Tassi, and she appeared in court and she defended herself fiercely. And I'll show a few more pictures. With the drawing of Lea Lublin and the ceramics of Laura Paschino, because the clay vessels always have an opening at the top. And for me, they are also like birth-giving vessels. So we have a few more artists. This is a Polish artist, a work from the 80s. You will have to buy the issue because I cannot go through all the pictures in 20 minutes. Eva Jospin, who makes these amazing constructions out of cardboard, incredible work. And then one of the last pictures I want to show is the work of Natalie Taylor. For me, she's like a contemporary Artemis, and she loves the woods and the wonders within it. And she wonders also, if nothing is done to encourage protection and regeneration for the years to come, what will happen to the earth, to this fascinating habit? So she took an old drawing and she transformed it into a tapestry. But the body of the Pictish woman in the image, which had tattoos, she replaced it by flowers, and the face is replaced by a skull. And actually, not to celebrate the power of the women with the flowers and nature, but also to stress the enormity of the ecological crisis and to provoke soul searching. So it's an image of both abundant, fertile life and death. And I hope I've gone in a kind of diagonal fashion through all the through several centuries to discuss the different attributes of Artemis: the moon, the wilderness, chase, chastity, and childbirth. Thank you. Yes. Oh, do I
Thank
share?
you so much.
No,
I share the image of Pachamama.
wait a second.
Okay.
Okay.
I just wanted to thank you, and I'm very impressed by the first vision of the issue. It's going to bring us, I think, many things to debate and to think about for a long period of time. Thank you so much, Catherine.
Thank you.